A gunshot echoes through the canyon, once. Then only wind, Wyoming, 1883. A man falls from Devil's Drop into darkness. They say he was a thief, say he deserved to die. Say the $4,000 bag fell with his body into the abyss, never to be found. But no one mentions the bullet. The bullet embedded in a pine trunk 50 yards above the bloodstain. No one mentions the man who pulled the trigger. The town that chose to believe the easy lie over the hard truth. 9 months later, a woman sits alone in a church, wearing her dead husband's shame. Shackled by chains the whole town forged for her, and the oak doors slam open. Not gently, but like thunder, a stranger walks in. Woodsmoke and wildness, clinging to his buckskin, he sits across from her. Doesn't ask permission, doesn't explain. Just sits in the space the entire town refused to touch, and so the war begins. Not with guns, but with truth. The kind of truth powerful men will kill to bury. This is a story about a promise. About honor in a world that forgot what honor means. About a man who keeps his word even when it cost everything, because some things are worth the price. Always worth the price. No matter what it takes. The autumn wind cut through Redemption Falls like a broken promise. Wyoming, 1883. 9 months after the earth swallowed Nathaniel Ashford whole. Or, so they said, the First Methodist Church sat at the edge of town. White clapboard, crooked steeple. Windows that rattled when the wind blew hard enough. Inside, warmth embraced the congregation. The smell of roasted venison mingled with corn and fresh bread. Spiced cider steamed in tin cups, releasing clouds of fragrant vapor into the air. The annual harvest supper. A time for gratitude, for community, for gathering close against the coming winter. A time when neighbors shared food and fellowship, when the year's bounty was celebrated, when thanks were offered for survival in this harsh land. Except Miriam Ashford sat alone, 48 years old. Hair the color of wheat with silver threading through the gold now. Hands that had once delivered babies and stitched wounds and held the dying. Hands no one wanted touching them anymore. She sat at the far end of the longest table, pine. Worn smooth by decades of elbows and plates and prayers. 6 feet of empty space stretched between her and the nearest person, Martha Gable. The postmaster's wife sat at that distance. A woman who had once brought Miriam blackberry preserves. Who had once asked Miriam's advice about her daughter's cough. Now Martha pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, turned her shoulder away, made herself a wall. Miriam looked down at her plate. Chipped porcelain, a spoonful of beans. Cornbread that had gone cold, because she'd been too afraid to reach for the basket when it passed by her empty stretch of table. She pushed the beans in a circle, around and around, not eating, just moving them in circles. Creating patterns in the sauce that meant nothing. The room hummed with voices. Laughter echoed off the vaulted ceiling. The clink of silverware against plates created a rhythm beneath the conversation. Children ran between tables, their excitement barely contained. Someone's fiddle warmed up in the corner, drawing experimental notes from the strings. Life happening all around her, without her because of him. Because Nathaniel had been a thief, they said. A coward. A man who stole $4,000 from the miners' cooperative and tried to run. A man who slipped on wet rocks at Devil's Drop and fell to his death, taking the money with him. Never recovered. That's what they said. That's what Sheriff Clayton Voss wrote in his report. That's what the whole town believed. And Miriam, the wife, the woman who should have known, should have seen the signs, should have stopped him. She wore his shame like a second skin. She ate her beans in silence, each swallow an act of defiance against the eyes that watched her, judged her, condemned her. The children whispered as they ran past. The widow Ashford, the thief's wife. Their parents had told them stories, warnings. Stay away from that woman. Her husband's sin might be catching, might spread like disease. Miriam had learned to make herself small, to take up as little space as possible, to arrive late and leave early, to never reach for food until others had taken their fill, to never speak unless spoken to, which meant she rarely spoke at all. 9 months. 270 days of this, of isolation within her own community. of walking streets where she'd lived for 20 years as if she were a stranger, of seeing neighbors cross to the other side when they spotted her coming, of finding rocks thrown at her cabin door, of discovering her small garden trampled, of hearing whispers cut off when she entered the general store. The Reverend had been kind, at least, had not barred her from services, had not suggested she find another place to worship, but kindness only extended so far. He did not sit with her, did not invite her to join the church committees, did not defend her when others spoke in harsh whispers. She had thought, in the beginning, that time would ease the hostility, that people would remember Nathaniel's 20 years of honest service, his meticulous bookkeeping, his quiet reliability, his willingness to help neighbors with their accounts, asking nothing in return. But time had only hardened the town's certainty. Nathaniel Ashford was a thief. His widow was complicit, willfully blind, and neither deserved compassion. Miriam finished pushing her beans around, set down her fork, folded her hands in her lap, and stared at the table's wood grain, traced at the patterns with her eyes. Waited for the evening to end, so she could slip out the side door and walk home alone through the darkness. She did not see the heavy oak doors open, did not notice the sudden silence that fell over the room like a blanket, did not feel the shift in atmosphere until every head had turned, every voice had stopped. Even the fiddle had gone quiet. The heavy oak doors slammed open, not the gentle creak of someone arriving late, not the polite nudge of a latecomer, trying not to disturb. Slammed, wood against stone. The sound echoed off the vaulted ceiling, rattled the windows, made the candles flicker and dance. Every head turned, every voice stopped. Even the fiddle went quiet, the bow frozen in mid-stroke. A man stood in the doorway, tall, 6'3", maybe more. Shoulders filled the frame, a frame that filled the doorway. Silas Drummond. The whole town knew of him. Few had spoken to him. He was a mountain man, a trapper, a ghost who descended from the high timber twice a year to trade pelts at Miller's General Store. He wore buckskin, dark with age and smoke and weather. A heavy coat lined with fur, the kind that could keep a man alive in temperatures that killed. Leather-wrapped boots that had seen 1,000 miles of rock and snow. Each piece of his clothing told a story of survival, of endurance, of a life lived far from civilization's comforts. His beard was silver, thick, untamed. His hair hung past his shoulders, tied back with a strip of rawhide. Around his neck a string of wolf teeth, each tooth a trophy, a victory, a testament to battles fought and won. At his hip a knife, long, sheathed in leather worn smooth by his hand, the handle shaped to his grip by years of use, and his eyes, gray, the color of winter sky before a storm. They swept the room with the practiced assessment of a predator, taking in the mayor at the head table, the mine owners with their tailored vests, the wives clutching their husbands' arms, the Reverend frozen mid-prayer, his mouth still open around words that would not come. The room held its collective breath. Silas Drummond at the harvest supper was unprecedented, unthinkable. The man avoided civilization like plague, spoke to no one and needed nothing. His appearances in town were brief, transactional, silent. He traded his pelts, bought his supplies, and vanished back into the mountains before anyone could attempt conversation. And then his gaze landed on the far end of the room, on the empty space surrounding Miriam Ashford. The sound of his boots echoed on the wooden floor. Thud, 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 each step deliberate, measured. He walked the length of the hall, past the mayor whose face had gone pale, past the whispered prayers that started up like nervous birds, past Martha Gable's horrified gasp, straight to Miriam's table. He stopped directly across from her. Up close he smelled of pine needles, wood smoke, cold mountain air, leather, and something wild, something that belonged to places where men rarely went. Miriam froze, her heart hammered against her ribs. She looked up slowly, afraid of what she might see. His gray eyes met hers, not with pity, not with curiosity, just meeting, seeing, acknowledging her as a person, not as a scandal, not as a cautionary tale. He pulled out the chair. The wood groaned under his weight as he settled into it. Not beside her, across. Facing her, claiming the space that everyone else had abandoned. making a statement that needed no words. His voice, when he spoke, was low, gravelly, like stones grinding together. Blessings on this table. He reached for the basket of cornbread, took a piece, buttered it with slow, deliberate movements. The entire room watched in paralyzed silence. Women clutched their husbands' arms tighter. Men shifted in their seats, uncertain whether this required intervention. Children stared with wide eyes, sensing something significant though they couldn't name what. Miriam's hands shook in her lap. "You shouldn't," her voice barely a whisper. "You shouldn't sit here." He took a bite of the cornbread, chewed, swallowed, met her eyes again with that steady, storm-colored gaze. "Why not? It's not good for you. They don't." She couldn't finish, couldn't give voice to the rejection she'd lived with for 9 months. "Don't what?" "Take kindly to me." He set the cornbread down, leaned back in his chair with the casual confidence of a man who'd faced grizzlies and wolves and survived winters that would kill lesser men. "I don't care much for their kindness. Don't need it. Don't want it." He reached for the stew, ladled a generous portion into his bowl, the motion simple, ordinary, but in this context, revolutionary. "You made this?" She blinked, confused by the question. The soup? "Smells good." Yes. I brought it." He tasted it, nodded with the faint approval of a man who rarely praised anything. "It's good," and that was it. He ate. She sat. The room remained frozen in shocked silence. Reverend Harrison cleared his throat. Once, twice, trying to restart the evening, trying to pretend everything was normal. But nothing was normal. Nothing would ever be normal again, because Silas Drummond, the man who avoided civilization like plague, who spoke to no one and needed nothing, was sitting across from the town's greatest disgrace, eating her soup. And he didn't look ashamed, didn't look uncomfortable, didn't look like he cared what a single person in that room thought. Slowly, conversations resumed, forced, awkward. The fiddle started up again, the tune less cheerful than before. Children were pulled close to their mothers. Men exchanged meaningful glances. But the evening continued because it had to, because stopping would acknowledge the disruption too directly. For the first time in 9 months, Miriam finished her meal without feeling the weight of 100 judgmental stares, because they were too busy staring at him, at this mountain man who had chosen, inexplicably, to sit with the widow, at this stranger who had broken the unspoken rule that Miriam Ashford must suffer her shame alone. She ate her cold cornbread, drank her cider, and felt something she hadn't felt since Nathaniel died. Not hope, exactly, but perhaps the absence of despair. A small space where crushing loneliness had been. A moment of human connection in a sea of isolation. When the meal ended, when families began gathering their coats, and mothers began pulling children toward the door, Silas stood. Miriam stood too, her movements automatic after years of social protocol. He inclined his head, just barely, a gesture of respect or acknowledgement or perhaps farewell, and then he walked toward the door. The crowd parted, like water around stone. No one spoke to him, no one dared. He moved through them as if they were ghosts, insubstantial and unimportant. Miriam watched him go. Watched the crowd part and reform behind him. Then she gathered her shawl, her empty dish, and slipped out the side door into the cold night air. The night air bit cold. Stars scattered across the black sky, no moon. Just endless dark and the sharp scent of coming snow. Miriam pulled her shawl tighter and began the walk toward home, a small cabin. Half a mile from town, on the banks of the Sweetwater River. Nathaniel had built it with his own hands when they'd first married. Solid, simple, a place that had once felt like sanctuary. Now, it felt like exile. Her feet crunched on gravel, the sound loud in the silence. She walked quickly, wanting to be home before the cold penetrated her thin coat, before the darkness grew absolute, and then, footsteps behind her, heavy, measured, not rushing but not far behind either. She stopped, fear spiked through her chest, turned slowly. Silas stood 10 feet back, a shadow among shadows. "Didn't mean to startle you." His voice carried easily in the still air. She stepped back instinctively. You're following me?" Needed to talk. Didn't seem right to do it in there. He gestured back toward the church. toward the judgment and whispers and hostile stares. About what? He stepped closer, so into the faint starlight, pulled something from inside his coat, an envelope. Old, stained, the paper soft from handling. He held it out. She took it, her hands shaking again. Not from cold. What is this? Open it, she did, carefully. Her fingers clumsy with cold and confusion. Inside, a letter, handwriting she knew as well as her own. Better, perhaps. Nathaniel's careful script. The loops and crosses that had filled ledgers and letters for 20 years. Her breath caught. The words swam. She forced herself to focus. Miriam. If you are reading this, I am dead. Trust Silas Drummond, only him? She looked up. Silas watched her. Not with pity, not with curiosity, just watching. Waiting patient as stone. Who are you? Her voice cracked. A man who owes your husband? Owes him what, my life? The wind picked up. It cut through the canyon, through the pines, through the space between them. Miriam clutched the letter, this impossible thing. Nathaniel's handwriting. Nathaniel's words. Telling her to trust a man she didn't know. A mountain man. A stranger who'd just upended her evening with a simple act of solidarity. I don't understand, you will. He turned to go, his coat billowing in the wind. Miriam's mind raced, questions multiplied faster than she could form them. She called out, wait. He stopped, didn't turn. Just stopped. Why now? Why? Why after 9 months? He looked back at her, those gray eyes catching starlight. Because it took me 9 months to find what I was looking for. What were you looking for? The truth. And then he walked away. Into the darkness. Disappeared as if he'd never been. As if the entire evening had been a fever dream. But the letter remained in her hands, real. Solid. Nathaniel's handwriting. Nathaniel's words. Trust Silas Drummond. Only him. Miriam stood in the road. Cold wind cutting through her thin clothes. Stars wheeling overhead in their ancient patterns. And in her hands, a message from her dead husband. A message that changed everything. She walked home slowly, mind spinning. Nathaniel had known Silas Drummond, had trusted him, had left instructions for her to do the same. But when? How? Nathaniel had never mentioned a mountain man, had never spoken of debts owed or lives saved, had never indicated he had connections beyond the town, beyond his careful world of ledgers and numbers. The cabin came into view. Dark windows, cold hearth. She'd left no fire burning. Couldn't afford to waste wood when she wasn't home. Inside, she lit a lamp. Started a fire. The familiar motions automatic, requiring no thought. Then she sat by the hearth, unfolded the letter again, read it by firelight. Again and again, the paper was old. The ink faded. This letter had been written some time ago. Months? Years? How long had Nathaniel carried the expectation of his own death? She thought back over their last months together, searching for signs she'd missed. Nathaniel had been distracted. She'd noticed that, coming home late from the miners' cooperative office, spending hours bent over ledgers by lamplight. Barely speaking at meals, she'd attributed it to his natural reserve, his tendency to become absorbed in his work. But now she wondered, had he been investigating? Had he discovered something? Had he known he was in danger? The questions circled like wolves. She had no answers, only this letter, and the memory of Silas Drummond sitting across from her, eating her soup. Not caring what the town thought. Trust Silas Drummond, only him. Miriam folded the letter carefully, placed it in her pocket, close to her heart, and stared into the fire. Watching flames consume wood, watching smoke rise and disappear. Wondering what truth Silas had found. Wondering if she wanted to know, because ignorance had been heavy. But knowledge might be heavier still. Miriam didn't sleep that night. She sat by the fire, the letter in her lap, reading it, again and again. Trust Silas Drummond, Nathaniel's handwriting. No mistaking it, the careful loops, the way he crossed his T's, the slight slant to the left. This was real, but it made no sense. Nathaniel had never mentioned Silas, had never spoken of owing anyone, had never indicated any connection to the mountain man who descended twice yearly to trade pelts. Questions multiplied in the darkness. How had they met? When? What debt could possibly bind her quiet? Reserved husband to a man who lived like a wild animal in the high timber? What had Nathaniel known about his own death? When had he written this letter? Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through her small windows. Miriam rose stiffly, her back aching from the hard chair. She needed to move, to do something. To break the paralysis of confusion, a knock at the door, sharp, deliberate. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, opened the door cautiously. The rising sun silhouetted a large figure on her porch. Silas, behind him, stacked against the side of her cabin wood, a full cord, maybe more, chopped, split, ready for winter, and hanging from the oak tree near the porch, a deer, dressed, wrapped in clean canvas. Enough meat for a month, enough to see her through the worst of winter's cold. She stared, her mind struggling to process this. You did this? Winter's coming. I can't pay you. Didn't ask you to. Then why? Because you'll need it. He tied his horse to the post. A massive roan, scared across the shoulder, battle-worn. The horse stood patiently, its breath steaming in the cold morning air. I need to show you something, Silas said. What? Not here. Too many eyes? She hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution. Don't trust strange men. Don't go into the woods. Don't leave the relative safety of your cabin. But Nathaniel's words echoed. Trust Silas Drummond. Only him. Give me a moment. She went inside, changed into her riding skirt, pulled on her boots. The good ones, leather, still strong despite their age. Grabbed her coat, the heavy one. If they were going into the mountains, she'd need it. When she came back out, Silas had saddled her horse, a bay mare. Old, gentle. A horse that had belonged to Nathaniel. He helped her mount, his hand rough, calloused, but careful, respectful of her dignity. They rode, north, into the high country, away from town, away from watching eyes, away from everything familiar. The sun rose slow, painting the mountains gold, then orange, then that particular shade of blue that only existed in Wyoming. Light like liquid, pouring over the peaks and filling the valleys. They rode for 2 hours. No words, just the sound of hooves on rock, the creak of leather, the wind sighing through the pines. Miriam's thoughts spun. Where were they going? What would Silas show her? And why did it require this journey into wilderness? The landscape grew more rugged, steeper. The trail narrowed until they rode single file, Silas leading, his broad back a constant presence ahead of her. The roan picked its way carefully over loose stones and around fallen logs until he stopped, in front of a cabin, small, weathered, tucked into a stand of pines so thick you'd miss it if you didn't know it was there. The logs were gray with age. The roof sagged slightly. No smoke came from the chimney. This is yours? She asked. What he dismounted, helped her down, his hand steadying her as her feet found solid ground. He led her inside. The cabin was simple. One room, a stone fireplace, a bed frame empty now, a table, 2 chairs, dust everywhere, thick on every surface. He hadn't lived here in some time. He knelt by the fireplace, pried up a loose stone with his knife. The stone came free with a grinding sound. Beneath it, a hollow space. He reached in, pulled out a metal box, rusted, locked. He took a key from around his neck. A leather cord worn smooth against his skin. Opened it. Inside, papers, ledgers, and a bullet, deformed, like it had struck something hard, the lead flattened on one side. He set the bullet on the table with a small, metallic click, then the papers. Your husband, Nathaniel. He saved my life 2 years ago. Miriam looked up sharply. What? I was hunting. Up near Red Creek. Grizzly took me by surprise. He pulled off his coat, rolled up his sleeve. The scars were deep, jagged, running from shoulder to elbow. The kind of scars that spoke of teeth and claws in desperate struggle. I'd have bled out. But Nathaniel found me, got me back to his place, patched me up. Took 3 weeks before I could ride. Miriam's throat tightened. I didn't know. He didn't tell you, didn't tell anyone. Just did it. He rolled his sleeve back down. We became, not friends exactly, but something. He'd come up here sometimes, when he needed to think. When the town got too small, we'd sit, talk some. Mostly about nothing. But he trusted me, and you trusted him. Yes, Silas picked up one of the papers, a ledger page. Torn, stained with dirt, and something darker, blood. He told me about a problem at the cooperative. Said the books didn't match. Said $4,000 had gone missing. Miriam's hands went cold. The room seemed to tilt. He was investigating it, yes, and he found who took it. Silas handed her the ledger page. She read. Nathaniel's handwriting. Meticulous. Detailed as always, May 15, 1883. Transfer cords, miners cooperative. Discrepancies identified across 5 fiscal years. Total, $4,000. Primary suspects, Sheriff Clayton Voss, Mayor Eugene Crandall. The words blurred. She read them again. Voss, Crandall. The men who had stood at Nathaniel's funeral, who had spoken of tragedy, who had shaken her hand and offered condolences. The men who had called her husband a thief, who had started the whispers, who had turned an entire town against her. They did this. Her voice shook. They killed him. Yes, how do you know? He picked up the bullet, held it up to the light filtering through the dusty window. I found this embedded in a pine tree, 50 yards above where Nathaniel fell. But they said he slipped. They said he lost his footing in the rain. He was shot from above. While he was running, the cabin spun. Miriam sat down hard on one of the chairs. Dust rose in a cloud around her. 9 months. 9 months of shame, of isolation, of whispers and turned backs and children throwing rocks at her door. 9 months of believing her husband had betrayed her, had betrayed everyone, and it was a lie. All of it. Why didn't you come forward? Her voice barely audible. I tried. Went to the sheriff, showed him the bullet. He said I was mistaken. Said it could have been there for years, said Nathaniel fell. End of a story. Because he's the one who killed him. Yes. She looked at the papers spread across the table. Birth certificates, deeds, transfer records. All in Nathaniel's careful handwriting. There's Silas pulled out another stack. Thicker, heavier, much more. She flipped through them, her hands shaking. Records. Going back 10 years. 20. Voss and Crandall. Taking money from land deals. Construction contracts. Mining claims. Not just 4,000, 50,000, maybe more. A systematic looting of the town, of families, of people who trusted them. Nathaniel found all of this, most of it. He was careful, methodical. He knew if he accused them without proof, they'd destroy him. So he gathered proof, and they destroyed him anyway. Miriam's hands curled into fists. Rage, pure, hot, burning rage. For 9 months she had carried Nathaniel's supposed sins, worn them like chains, and he had been a good man, trying to do the right thing. And they murdered him for it. There's one more thing. Silas pulled out a second envelope, this one sealed. Her name written across the front in Nathaniel's hand. She took it, her fingers trembled, broke the seal, unfolded the letter. My dearest Miriam, if you are reading this, then I have failed, and I am gone. I know our marriage was not perfect. I was not the husband you deserved. Not romantic, not passionate. But I loved you, in my way, completely. I discovered something terrible. Men I trusted, men we all trusted, have stolen from this town for years. I could not let it stand. I know what this will cost. I know they will come for me. But some things are worth the price. If I am gone, do not mourn me forever. Do not live in the shadow of my choices. Find happiness, find life. You deserve that. Silas Drummond is a good man, broken, like many of us. But good, trust him. He will protect you when I cannot. Live for both of us. Yours. And tears came. For the first time in 9 months she let them fall. Great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Grief not for what was lost, but for what had been stolen. For the man she'd known. The quiet, methodical man who saw patterns where others saw chaos. Who couldn't let wrongness stand. Who had loved her in his reserved way. Silas stood, still, silent, giving her space. When she finally looked up, her face wet, her eyes swollen, he handed her a handkerchief. Clean, worn soft from she took it. Thank you, he nodded, waited. Patient as mountains, what do we do now? Her voice steadier than she felt. We take this to the federal marshal. In Denver. He's honest. He'll listen. Denver is 200 miles away. Yes. Through the mountains. With winter coming. Yes. And Voss. He'll know. If we leave. If we try, he already knows. She looked up sharply. What? I've been asking questions. Poking around Devil's Drop. Looking for evidence. He knows someone's looking. And after last night. After I sat with you at that supper, he'll put it together. He already has. As if summoned by their words, the sound of hoofbeats. Approaching fast. Multiple horses. Silas moved to the window, peered through the gap between logs. Sheriff. Miriam's blood went cold. How many? 4. Plus Voss, he turned to her, his face grave. Stay inside. No matter what, Silas, stay inside. He walked out onto the porch. Miriam peered through the gap in the logs. Sheriff Clayton Voss sat tall on a black stallion, 58 years old, still strong, still commanding, silver at his temples, a tailored coat under his badge, twin revolvers at his hips. He looked respectable, like a man who protected people, not like a murderer. Behind him 4 deputies, young, loyal, armed. Their faces showed tension, uncertainty. They'd been told they were pursuing dangerous criminals. They believed it. Voss smiled. The expression didn't reach his eyes. Drummond. Didn't expect to find you down from your perch, Sheriff. Heard you made quite the scene last night. At the church supper, just ate a meal. With the widow Ashford. Interesting choice. Free country, is it? Voss's smile faded. See, that's where you're wrong. This is my county. My town. And I don't like troublemakers. Not making trouble, no? Then what do you call this? Voss gestured to the cabin. Private property? Used to be. Filed for abandonment last month. This land reverts to the county. Silas's jaw tightened. Awful convenient, legal. That's all that matters. Voss leaned forward in his saddle. I know what you're doing, Drummond. I know you've been nosing around Red Creek. Asking questions about Nathaniel Ashford. Man has a right to ask questions. Not when those questions slander a dead man. Not when they disturb the peace. What if I found something that says different? Voss's hand moved to his revolver, casual, but deliberate. Then I'd say you're mistaken. Grief does strange things to people, makes them see things that aren't there, especially men who've been alone too long. I'm not grieving, no, but you're interfering, and I can't have that. Can't have what? The truth? The truth, Voss laughed, cold. The truth is Nathaniel Ashford stole $4,000 and died running from justice. The truth is his widow should be grateful. She's not in jail herself. The truth is you need to pack your things. Leave my county. And never come back. And if I don't, Voss drew his gun, pointed it at Silas. Then I'll arrest you for trespassing, resisting, and whatever else I need to charge you with to make you disappear. The 4 deputies drew their weapons. 5 guns. Pointed at one unarmed man. Inside the cabin, Miriam's hands tightened on the windowsill. She looked at the papers spread across the table, the evidence. Everything Nathaniel had died for. If Voss came inside, if he found this, it would all be over. She moved quickly, gathered the papers, the ledgers, the bullet, shoved them back into the metal box, locked it, her hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped the key, looked around desperately. Where? Where could she hide it? The fireplace. She lifted the loose stone, dropped the box into the hollow, replaced the stone, kicked dust over it. Just as Voss's voice carried through the walls, deputies. Search the cabin. No, the door opened. 2 deputies stepped inside, young men, barely 20. They looked around nervously, uncomfortable with this duty but too loyal or too frightened to refuse. Miriam stood by the fireplace, hands folded, trying to look calm, trying to keep her face neutral. One deputy opened the empty cupboard. Found nothing. The other checked under the bed frame. Nothing there either. Nothing here, Sheriff. Voss appeared in the doorway. His eyes landed on Miriam, Mrs. Ashford. What a surprise, Sheriff. Didn't realize you were acquainted with our local hermit. Mr. Drummond was kind enough to bring me firewood. Firewood. Voss stepped inside. How charitable. He walked a slow circle around the room, his boots leaving tracks in the dust. You know, it's interesting. Your husband dies under suspicious circumstances. And now, 9 months later, you're keeping company with a man who's asking uncomfortable questions. I'm not keeping company with anyone, no? He stopped in front of her. Then what would you call this? Accepting help from a neighbor who lives 15 miles into the mountains. A kind man. Voss leaned closer. His breath smelled of tobacco and coffee. Let me give you some advice, Miriam. Woman to woman. So to speak, she didn't respond. Didn't trust her voice. Your husband left you in a precarious position. The town, they've been generous, letting you stay. Letting you live in that cabin even though technically, the debts your husband left should have taken it. I don't have any debts, don't you? $4,000. Missing. Your husband dead. Someone has to account for it. Nathaniel didn't steal anything. The evidence says otherwise. What evidence? A missing bag? A convenient fall? Voss's eyes hardened. Careful, or what? You'll kill me too? The room went silent. The deputies shifted, uncomfortable, uncertain. This wasn't what they'd been told they'd be doing. This wasn't how law enforcement was supposed to work. Voss smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're grieving. Not thinking clearly. I'll forgive the accusation. This time he stepped back. But hear me, both of you, this matter is closed. Nathaniel Ashford was a thief. He died, fleeing justice. And if either of you suggests otherwise, I will make your lives very, very difficult. He walked to the door, stopped. Oh, and Drummond, you have 24 hours to vacate this property. After that, you'll be arrested for trespassing. He mounted his horse. Good day, and they rode off, leaving Silas and Miriam standing in the doorway, watching dust settle. The silence stretched, heavy with threat and implication. When the sound of hooves faded completely, Silas turned to her. We need to leave. Tonight, he'll follow. I know. He'll kill us. He'll try. Miriam looked back at the cabin, at the loose stone hiding everything Nathaniel had died for. We take the evidence, yes, and we ride to Denver, yes, through 200 miles of wilderness. With winter coming and a sheriff hunting us, Silas met her eyes, those gray eyes that had seen too much, survived too much. Yes, she nodded, once, firm. Then we'd better get ready. They rode back to Miriam's cabin in silence. The sun high now, but the air cold, getting colder. Winter approached like an inevitable verdict. When they arrived, Miriam dismounted and started toward the house, and stopped. The door stood ajar. She always locked it, always. Had locked it this morning before leaving with Silas. The wood around the latch showed fresh scratches. Someone had forced it. Silas saw it too. He held up a hand. Stay back. Drew his knife. Approached the door carefully. Pushed it open with his boot. Inside, chaos. Her belongings scattered everywhere. Drawers pulled out, contents dumped on the floor. Mattress slashed, the stuffing pulled out and thrown about. Cupboards emptied onto the floor. Even the floorboards pried up in places. Someone had searched, thoroughly, viciously. Miriam stepped inside. Her hands shook. This was all she had left. This small cabin. These few things. The remnants of a life she'd built with Nathaniel. And someone had violated it. Had torn through her privacy, her memories, her sanctuary. They were looking for evidence. Silas's voice was quiet. Did they find anything? You don't keep papers here, do you know? Nathaniel kept everything at his office, in town. But after he died, they cleared it. Said it was county property now. They destroyed it, probably. She knelt, picked up a photograph. The frame broken, the glass shattered. But the image intact. Her and Nathaniel, their wedding day, 20 years ago. They looked so young. So hopeful. Nathaniel in his best suit, borrowed from his father. Miriam in her mother's dress, altered to fit, standing in front of the church, the same church where last night Silas had sat with her. She set it carefully on the table. The only piece of furniture still upright. I can't stay here. No, if I do, they'll come back. And next time it won't be to search. Pack what you need. Light. We ride at dusk. She nodded, moved through the cabin. Taking only essentials, a change of clothes, her father's pocket watch, Nathaniel's rifle, a blanket, the photograph, things she could carry, things that mattered. As she packed, a knock at the door. Both of them froze. Silas moved to the window, peered out. It's the priest. Miriam frowned, opened the door. Father Josiah Thorne stood on her porch. 67 years old, white hair, bent back, kind eyes. But today those eyes looked haunted. Father, Miriam. May I come in? She stepped aside. He entered, saw the destruction, crossed himself. Dear God, the sheriff's men I know, you know? Thorne looked at Silas, then back to Miriam. I need to confess something. Confess? Not in the sacramental sense, but a truth, one I should have spoken months ago. Miriam gestured to a chair, the only one not broken. Thorne sat, his hands shook as he folded them in his lap. I knew your husband was innocent, the words hung in the air. Miriam felt the room tilt. What? I knew. From the beginning. I knew Nathaniel didn't steal that money. How? Because the night he died, I saw Sheriff Voss riding toward Devil's Drop. Late, after midnight, I was returning from a sick call. Old Mrs. Henderson. She lives near the pass. You saw Voss, yes, riding fast, and he wasn't alone. Mayor Crandall was with him. Miriam's legs went weak. She sat down hard on the floor. No chairs left. You saw them. The night Nathaniel died, yes. And you didn't say anything. Thorne's face crumpled. I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But 2 days later, for confession. He confessed to killing Nathaniel, not in those words. But yes, he confessed to doing what was necessary, to protecting the town, to removing a threat, and you couldn't tell anyone. Because of the seal of confession, I was bound, by sacred law, by my vows. I thought perhaps there would be another way. That the truth would come out. That someone else would question, would investigate, but no one did, no. Everyone believed the story. And you suffered. And I did nothing. He wept, an old man. Broken by his own silence, Miriam looked at him. She should feel angry, should feel betrayed. But all she felt was tired of anger, tired of grief, tired of carrying weight that wasn't hers. Why tell me now? Because I can't live with it anymore. Because last night, at the supper, when Mr. Drummond sat with you, when he showed the whole town that you were not alone, I realized silence is a sin too. Maybe the worst sin. He reached into his coat, pulled out a small journal. This is mine, my personal record. Not for the church. But I wrote down everything I saw that night. The time, the direction they rode. What Voss said during confession. Not the exact words. But enough, he held it out. Use it. Please, make this right. Miriam took the journal. This could cost you everything, I know. The church will defrock you, I know. Voss will come for you, I know. She looked at the old priest. Why? Because I am old. And I am dying, and I would like to meet my Maker with a clean conscience. Silas spoke for the first time. You're dying? Cancer. The doctor says 6 months. Maybe less. Miriam's throat tightened. Father, I'm sorry, don't be. I've had a good life, a long life. But I would like it to mean something. At the end, he stood. There's one more thing. Voss is gathering men. I heard him at the saloon. 20 men, maybe more. He's planning to ride out tonight. To silence you. Both of you? Tonight? Yes. Silas and Miriam exchanged glances. Then we leave now, Silas said. Thorne nodded. Turn to go. Father. Miriam called. He stopped. Come with us. He blinked. What? Come with us to Denver. We'll need your testimony. And you shouldn't be here when Voss comes back. I'm an old man. I'll slow you down. You're a brave man, and we need you. Thorne looked at her, then at Silas. Silas nodded. She's right, you come. Thorne's eyes filled with tears. All right, I'll come. They left as the sun touched the mountains. 3 riders, Silas on his roan, Miriam on her bay. Father Thorne on an old gray gelding borrowed from the church stable. Behind them, Redemption Falls, the only home Miriam had ever known. Ahead, 200 miles of rock and snow, and men who wanted them dead. They rode hard. North first, then east. Following game trails that only someone like Silas would know. Away from the main road. Away from places Voss would expect. The temperature dropped as they climbed. Miriam pulled her coat tighter. Her breath came out in clouds. Thorne struggled. Back bent, his breathing labored. But he didn't complain. Didn't ask to stop. Kept riding, his face set with determination. A man who'd finally chosen action over silence. As the last light faded, Silas led them into a narrow canyon. A cave hidden behind a waterfall, frozen now. The water turned to ice. Inside, dry, sheltered from wind, Silas built a fire small, smokeless, the kind that wouldn't draw attention. They sat around it. No one spoke for a long time. The fire crackled. Outside, wind howled through the canyon. Finally, Thorne broke the silence. I'm sorry, Miriam. For not speaking sooner, you're speaking now. 9 months too late. She looked at him. My husband, in his letter, he said some things are worth the price. I think he'd understand. Why you waited, would he? He was a patient man. Thorne smiled. He was a good man. Yes. Silence again. Silas poked the fire, added a small piece of wood. We need to talk about the route, Miriam nodded. There are 3 ways to Denver. The main road through South Pass. Fast, but exposed. Voss will have men there. What's the second? North, through the Wind River Range. Harder, higher, but fewer people. And the third? Silas hesitated. Devil's Drop, Miriam went cold. Where Nathaniel died, yes. Why would we go there? Because it's the last place Voss would expect. And there's something there I need to show you. What? The place he was shot from. I found it, but I need you to see it. To understand. Understand what? How this happened. Exactly how. Because when we get to Denver, when we face a federal marshal, we need to know every detail. We need to be able to answer every question. Miriam stared into the fire. Devil's Drop, the place that haunted her dreams. The last place Nathaniel breathed. All right, says Silas looked at her. You're sure? No, but we go anyway, he nodded. We rest tonight, leave at first light. It's a day's ride, they settled in. Miriam wrapped herself in her blanket, lay down on the cold stone, closed her eyes. But sleep didn't come. Instead, memories, Nathaniel reading by lamplight. His glasses perched on his nose, his careful handwriting filling page after page. The way he'd look up when she entered the room, not with passion, but with contentment. Like she was exactly where she should be. They hadn't had a grand love, no sweeping romance, no breathless kisses, just partnership, respect, quiet affection, and she'd thought maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all love needed to be. But now she'd never know. If it could have been more. If given time, they might have found something deeper. Because time was stolen from them. By men who valued money over life. A sound outside the cave. Silas was on his feet instantly, knife drawn. Thorne woke, confused. Miriam sat up, listened footsteps, crunching on frozen ground, coming closer. Silas moved to the cave entrance. Peered out, went still. What is it? Miriam whispered. Someone's coming, Voss? On foot, the footsteps stopped. A voice called out. Young, male, please, don't shoot. I'm not armed. Silas didn't lower his knife. Show yourself. A figure stepped into the dim light of the cave mouth. A young man, maybe 28, tall, lean, dark hair, wearing a marshal's badge. Miriam gasped. Silas tensed. The young man raised his hands. My name is Tobias Voss. I'm a federal marshal out of Denver, and I think my father killed your husband. Tobias Voss stood at the cave entrance, hands raised, badge glinting in the firelight. Son of the man who murdered Nathaniel Ashford. Miriam's hand went to the rifle beside her blanket. Silas's knife didn't waver, easy. Tobias's voice steady. Calm. I'm not here to arrest anyone. Then why are you here? Silas's words like gravel. To help, help. Miriam stood. Your father killed my husband, I know, and you expect us to believe you're here to help? I don't expect you to believe anything, but I'm asking you to listen. Thorne shifted, his old bones creaking. Perhaps we should hear what the young man has to say. Silas didn't move, still blocking the entrance, still ready. Tobias lowered his hand slowly. 3 days ago, I received a telegram from my father. Said he needed me home, said there was trouble, a dangerous fugitive. A mountain man who'd kidnapped a woman. That's a lie. Miriam's voice sharp, I know that now. But when I arrived, when I saw the whole town talking about it, when I heard the story, it seemed believable. Why? Tobias met her eyes. Because my father is the sheriff. And I wanted to believe him. He stepped closer. Silas tensed. But Tobias stopped just inside the cave. Then I met Doc Adelaide Crane, the doctor. Miriam frowned. Yes. She asked to speak with me, privately. Said she had information about Nathaniel Ashford's death. He reached slowly into his coat. May I? Silas nodded once. Tobias unfolded a paper. This is Doc Crane's examination notes. From the day they brought your husband's body down from the mountain. He held it toward Miriam. She took it. Her hands, shaking, the handwriting precise. Medical, pant, Nathaniel Ashford. Age 51, deceased. Cause of official, blunt, force trauma from fall. Cause of death, actual. Gunshot wound, entry posterior right shoulder. Trajectory downward, exit anterior left chest. Bullet retrieved from clothing, .44 caliber. Time of death, estimated between midnight and 2 a.m. Note, fall occurred post-mortem. Body positioned at base of cliff after death. Miriam's vision blurred, positioned, they shot him. Then threw him off the cliff. To make it look like an accident. She kept this, her voice barely a whisper. Hidden. For 9 months, my father threatened her. Said, if she spoke, he'd make sure she lost her medical license. Make sure no one in Wyoming would ever trust her again. Why tell you now? Because she couldn't live with it anymore. And because I'm federal, not local. I have jurisdiction that supersedes my father's authority. Tobias pulled out another paper. This is a sworn affidavit. Doc Crane's testimony. Witnessed and notarized. She's willing to testify in federal court. Silas lowered his knife, slightly. Why should we trust you? Tobias looked at him, because I confronted my father 2 days ago. Asked him directly about Nathaniel Ashford, about the examination, about the bullet. What did he say? He struck me. Tobias turned his head. Even in the dim firelight, the bruise was visible. Dark purple along his jaw. My father raised me to believe in law, in justice, in doing what's right even when it's hard. His voice cracked. And then I learned he's been doing the opposite for years, maybe decades. You expect us to feel sorry for you? Miriam's anger flared. No, I expect you to use me. I'm a federal marshal. I have authority. I have resources. And I have every reason to want my father brought to justice. Even if it destroys your family? My family's already destroyed. The moment he pulled that trigger, silence. The fire crackled. Wind howled outside. Finally, Thorne spoke. The son is not responsible for the father's sins. Miriam looked at the old priest. You believe him? I believe people can choose differently than their parents. Can choose better. She turned back to Tobias. If you're lying, if this is some kind of trap, it's not. How do we know? Tobias unbuckled his gun belt. Set it on the ground, stepped away from it. Because I'm unarmed now, and you're not. Silas studied him. Long, hard, then he sheathed his knife. You can stay. For now. Tobias nodded. Thank you, don't thank me yet. You try anything, anything at all, and I'll gut you like a deer. Understood? Miriam sat back down, her mind racing. Clayton Voss's son. Here, offering to help, it seemed impossible. But the affidavit was real, the bruise was real. And the look in Tobias's eyes, that was real too. Grief, betrayal. The specific pain of learning your father is a monster. She knew that look, because she'd worn it herself when the whole town told her Nathaniel was a thief. Tell us everything, she said. Tobias sat and began. The night stretched long. They sat in the cave. Tobias told them about his investigation, about Doc Crane's courage, about the evidence he'd been gathering. When he finished, Miriam felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope, not the fragile kind, the solid kind. Built on facts and testimony and federal authority. We should sleep, Miriam said finally. We have a long ride tomorrow. Where are we going? Tobias asked. Devil's Drop. His face went pale. Where your husband died, yes, why? Silas answered. Because your father made a mistake there, and I need to show Miriam what it was. The next morning came cold, frost thick on the ground. Their breath like smoke. They rode out at first light, 4 of them now. Tobias on a sturdy buckskin he'd left tethered outside the cave. The terrain grew steeper, rockier. The horses picked their way carefully. One wrong step could mean a broken leg, or worse. Around midday, they stopped to water the horses. At a half-frozen stream, Miriam knelt, filled her canteen. The cold water made her hands ache. Tobias knelt beside her. Can I ask you something? She didn't look at him. You can ask your husband. What was he like? She paused. Why do you want to know? Because I'm trying to understand why my father would do this. Kill a man, over money. There has to be more to it. Miriam sat back on her heels. Nathaniel was quiet, methodical. He saw patterns where other people saw chaos. Numbers made sense to him in a way people didn't. He was a bookkeeper. For 20 years, he loved it. The precision, the balance. Everything adding up correctly, and when it didn't add up, he couldn't let it go. It bothered him. Like a splinter under the skin, Tobias nodded slowly. So when he found the discrepancies in the cooperative's accounts, he had to find out why, had to fix it. It wasn't even about justice. Not at first. It was just wrong, and wrong things needed to be made right. He was a good man. Yes, I'm sorry my father took him from you. Miriam looked at Tobias then. Really looked. He had his father's height, his father's strong jaw. But his eyes were different, softer, sadder. You're not your father. Sometimes I worry I am. Then don't be, she stood. Every day you choose. Be different. Choose better. She walked back to her horse, leaving Tobias kneeling by the stream. They reached Devil's Drop as the sun began its descent, a narrow canyon, sheer walls of red rock residing on both sides. At the far end, the drop, a cliff face, 200 feet straight down. Miriam's hands tightened on the reins. This was the place. Silas dismounted. "We walk from here." They left the horses, followed him along a narrow ledge. The wind screamed through the canyon. Miriam pressed close to the rock wall. Below, far below, the place where Nathaniel's body had been found. Silas stopped, pointed to a pine tree, gnarled, old, clinging to the rock face about 50 feet above the trail. There, Miriam looked, didn't see anything. Silas climbed, hand over hand, sure-footed as a mountain goat, reached the tree, pulled out his knife, dug into the bark, and extracted something. Climbed back down, opened his palm. A bullet, deformed, flattened on one side. This is where the shooter stood, high ground. Clear line of sight to the trail below, he pointed. Miriam followed his gesture, saw it, the perfect ambush spot. Someone standing here could see anyone coming up the trail, could take a shot, could disappear into the rocks. And down there, Silas pointed to a cluster of boulders. That's where I found Nathaniel's satchel, hidden, like he tried to protect it before he died. Miriam's legs felt weak. She could see it. Nathaniel riding up this trail late at night alone. Maybe he heard something, maybe he didn't. And then the shot. From above. He never had a chance. I want to see where they found him. Silas looked at her. "Miriam, I need to see." He nodded, led her around the ledge, to a narrow path that switched back down. They descended, carefully, until they reached the bottom, a jumble of rocks, some stained dark. Blood, washed by 9 months of rain and snow, but still visible. If you knew where to look, Miriam knelt, placed her hand on the cold stone. This was where Nathaniel ended, where his life spilled out onto uncaring rock. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't know. I'm sorry I believed them. I'm sorry," a hand on her shoulder. Silas. He didn't speak, just stood with her. Until she was ready. Finally, she stood. "We get them. We get them both, yes. And we make sure everyone knows what they did, yes." She turned. Tobias and Thorne stood a respectful distance away. "I've seen enough. Let's go." They made camp that night in a shallow cave, similar to the one before, but colder. The temperature had dropped. Snow would come soon. As they ate dried meat and hard bread, Tobias spoke. "There's something else you should know." Miriam looked up. "Mayor Crandall has a son." "Wyatt? I know Wyatt," Miriam said. "He was friends with Nathaniel. He still is." "In a way. What do you mean?" "I ran into him 2 days ago, in Denver. He was asking about federal jurisdiction, about how to report corruption in local government." Silas leaned forward. "He knows? I think he suspects. We didn't talk long. He was nervous, said he couldn't stay. But he gave me this." Tobias pulled out a folded paper, handed it to Miriam. She opened it, a page torn from a ledger. But not the miners' cooperative. This was personal. Mayor Eugene Crandall's private accounts, dated entries, going back 20 years. Payments, transfers, bribes, amounts that made the 4,000 from the cooperative look small. Where did he get this? From his father's safe, I assume. Why would he risk that? Because Wyatt Crandall hates what his father has become. And he's been looking for a way out, a way to make things right. Thorne stirred the fire. The sins of the fathers. Visited upon the children, will he testify? Miriam asked. "I don't know. He ran before I could ask. Then we need to find him. He said he'd be at his father's hunting cabin. North of here. Near Elk Ridge." Silas frowned. "That's 30 miles out of our way." "I know, and your father will have men searching. More time we spend traveling, more chance we get caught. I know that too. But if Wyatt has access to his father's personal records, if he's willing to turn, that's evidence we can't ignore." Miriam looked at Silas. He met her eyes. "Your call," she thought, weighed the risks. "Finally, we go to Elk Ridge. We need Wyatt. And his evidence." Tobias nodded. "We leave at dawn." They rode for 2 days through increasingly difficult terrain. The snow came light at first, then heavier, covering the trails, making the horses nervous. Thorne struggled. His breathing labored, his face gray. On the second night, Miriam examined him, her old nursing skills returning. "Your lungs are congested. I'm fine. You're not fine. You need rest, warmth. Medicine? We don't have any of those things. No, she looked at Silas. He was already preparing, gathering pine needles, making a tea. It wouldn't cure anything, but it might help. Miriam held the cup to Thorne's lips. He drank, grimaced. Tastes like tree. It is tree, despite everything. He smiled. Thank you. For caring for an old fool, you're not a fool. I let your husband die without speaking. You're speaking now. That's what matters, is it? Yes, he closed his eyes. I hope you're right. They reached Elk Ridge on the third day. The hunting cabin sat in a clearing. Small, weathered, smoke rising from the chimney. Someone was home. Silas approached first, knife ready. Knocked on the door, footsteps inside. The door opened. A man stood there, 34, tall, dark circles under his eyes. Wyatt Crandall. He looked at Silas, then passed him to the others. His gaze landed on Miriam. Mrs. Ashford. Wyatt, I'm glad you're alive. The town, they said you'd been kidnapped. That Drummond was dangerous. The town was lied to. I know. He stepped back. Come in, please. It's freezing. They entered the cabin. Warm, sparse but functional. A fire crackled in the stone hearth. Wyatt gestured to chairs. They sat. He paced, nervous energy radiating from him. Tobias told you? He asked. About the ledger page. Yes, I have more. He went to a trunk in the corner, opened it, pulled out a leather-bound journal. My father kept meticulous records. Every bribe, every stolen claim, every family he destroyed. He set the journal on the table. 20 years. All here. Miriam opened it. Page after page. Names she recognized. Families who'd lost farms, ranches, businesses. All to Eugene Crandall. And Clayton Voss. Why? She whispered. Why keep this insurance? Wyatt said bitterly. Against Voss. In case the sheriff ever tried to turn on him. My father wanted leverage. He trusted you with this? He doesn't know I have it. He got drunk. Last week. Passed out in his study, left the safe open. I couldn't stop myself. I looked. He sat, buried his face in his hands. I've suspected for years. But seeing it all laid out. My father is a monster, yes, Miriam said simply. I'm sorry, for what he did to your husband. For all of it, are you willing to testify? Wyatt looked up. Against my own father? Yes, he was quiet long. Finally, he's my father. But he's also a murderer, a thief. He's destroyed this town. These people. He stood. Yes, I'll testify. Tobias stepped forward. This changes everything. With this journal. With Doc Crane's affidavit. With Father Thorne's eyewitness account. We have a case. A real case. Then we ride for Denver, Silas said. Tomorrow, Tobias agreed. We rest tonight. Leave at first light. But a sound outside. Horses. Many horses. Silas moved to the window, looked out. His face went hard. We have company. Miriam joined him. 20 men, maybe more, surrounding the cabin. And at the front, Sheriff Clayton Voss. Voss sat tall on his black stallion. Even in the falling snow, he looked commanding. His voice carried across the clearing. Wyatt Crandall, I know you're in there. Come out now. Wyatt went pale. How did he find us? Tracked us, Silas said grimly. We left prints in the snow. What do we do? Miriam grabbed her rifle. Checked the ammunition. 6 shots. Silas had his rifle. Tobias had 2 pistols. Wyatt had a shotgun. Thorne had a Bible. Against 20 armed men. We can't fight them, Tobias said. We can't surrender, Miriam countered. If we fight, we die. If we surrender, we die anyway. Voss's voice again. I'm giving you 1 minute. Then we come in. Silas looked at the cabin. 1 door, 2 windows, all easily covered. No back exit. They were trapped. There might be another way, Wyatt said. What? The root cellar. There's a tunnel. My father had it dug, years ago. For storage. But it comes out near the tree line. 50 yards north. Can we all fit? It'll be tight. But yes, show me. Wyatt pulled back a rug. Revealed a trap door. Opened it. Below, darkness. A ladder descending into earth. Miriam and Thorne go first, Silas ordered, then Wyatt. Tobias and I will hold them off. Give you time to get clear. No, Miriam said. Not negotiable. I'm not leaving you. You have to. You have the evidence. You get that to Denver. You make sure this means something, Silas. He turned to her. In the dim light, his gray eyes held hers. Your husband asked me to protect you. I gave my word. A man's word is his bond. Protecting me doesn't mean dying for me. Sometimes it does. Outside, Voss's voice. Time's up. Gunfire. Shattering the windows. Splintering the door. Go. Now Silas pushed Miriam toward the trap door. She hesitated. 1 second. 2, then she climbed down. Thorne followed. Then Wyatt. Above, Silas and Tobias took positions, returned fire. Miriam's feet hit packed earth. Cold. Damp. Wyatt lit a lantern. This way. They moved through a tunnel, barely wide enough for shoulders. Roots hung from the ceiling. Dirt walls pressed close. Behind them, the sound of gunfire. Shouting, Miriam's heart pounded. She wanted to go back. Wanted to fight. But Silas was right. Someone had to survive. Someone had to tell the truth. They emerged 50 yards north, hidden by pine trees, snow falling harder now. The horses, Wyatt said. We need to circle back. Get them. Too risky? Miriam said. We can't walk to Denver. We'll manage. Thorne coughed, deep rattling. He leaned against a tree. Father, Miriam went to him. His face was ashen, his lips blue. I can't. Can't breathe. She felt his forehead, burning, fever. We need to get you warm, no time, he gasped. You have to go. We're not leaving you, you must. Another coughing fit, blood on his lips. Miriam's medical training told her what she didn't want to know. His lungs were failing. The cold, the exertion, the stress. It was too much. Wyatt. Help me. Together they lowered Thorne to the ground. Miriam cradled his head easy. Breathe easy. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. You're a brave man. Not brave. Just tired of being afraid. He reached up, touched her face. Tell them the truth. Make it matter, I will. I promise good. His eyes closed. His breathing slowed and then stopped. Father Josiah Thorne, 67 years old, died in the snow. Free at last, Miriam closed his eyes, said a prayer. Though she wasn't sure she believed anymore, Wyatt stood. We have to move. We can't just leave him. We don't have a choice. If Voss finds us, a gunshot. Close. Too close. They ran. Through the trees, through the snow. Miriam's lungs burned. Her legs screamed. Behind them, voices. Dogs barking. They were being hunted. Watt grabbed her arm. This way, down a slope, slipping on ice. Into a ravine. They pressed against the rock wall, breathing hard, trying to be silent. Above, footsteps. Men passing. They went this way. No. I see tracks heading north, split up. Search both directions. The footsteps faded. Miriam and Wyatt waited. Minutes stretched. Finally, silence. We need to go back, Miriam whispered. Back where? The cabin. Silas and Tobias. They're probably dead. You don't know that, Miriam. 20 men against 2. The math isn't good. I don't care about math. She started back. Wyatt grabbed her. Wait, let go. If you go back, you die. And everything your husband died for. Everything Thorne just died for. It's for nothing. She stopped. Because he was right. She hated it. But he was right. Then what do? We go to Denver, like we planned. We get this evidence to the federal court. We make sure Voss and my father hang. And Silas? If he's alive, he'll find us. Miriam wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe Silas was too tough, too skilled, too stubborn to die, but she thought that about Nathaniel too. And he was gone. All right. They moved. Quietly, carefully, away from the cabin, away from the gunfire, into the wilderness. 2 people with the truth, running for their lives. They walked for 3 days. No horses, no food except what they could scavenge. Frozen berries, pine nuts. Once a rabbit Wyatt managed to snare. The cold was brutal. Miriam's fingers went numb, her lips cracked and bled. But she kept moving, because stopping meant dying. Wyatt proved tougher than she'd expected. He knew the land, knew how to find water, shelter. Which plants were safe to eat? My father, he said one night, as they huddled under a rock overhang. He used to take me hunting, when I was young. Before I knew what he really was, what was he like then? Charming. Everyone loved him. He'd tell jokes. Buy rounds at the saloon. Help people with their problems. And you loved him. I worshipped him. Wyatt stared into the small fire. When did you realize? I was 16. I saw him take money from a man who wanted a building permit. Just slipped him an envelope. My father counted the bills, put them in his pocket. Approved the permit. What did you do? Nothing. I told myself everyone does it. It's just how things work. But I knew it was wrong. And you stayed quiet. For 18 years, yes. Why? He looked at her. Because he's my father, and I loved him, and I wanted to believe, despite everything, that he was still good. Somewhere inside, and now? Now I know. There's no good left. If there ever was, they sat in silence. until Miriam spoke. My husband, Nathaniel, he wasn't perfect either, no? He was distant sometimes, locked in his own head. We'd go days barely talking, just existing in the same house. But you loved him, I did. Not the passionate kind of love. Not what you read about in novels, but steady, dependable. He was my partner. That's something. It was everything. I just didn't realize it until he was gone. She pulled her coat tighter. I keep thinking, if I'd known. If I'd suspected what he was investigating, I could have stopped him. Could have told him to let it go. The money wasn't worth his life. Would he have listened? No. Then you couldn't have stopped him, I know. But I wish I'd tried. Wyatt nodded. We all have regrets. On the fourth day they saw it. Smoke rising in the distance. A town. Small, but civilization. They stumbled in. Half frozen, exhausted. The townspeople stared. Two strangers, covered in dirt and blood and snow, looking like ghosts. A woman approached. Middle-aged. Kind eyes. Are you all right? Miriam tried to speak. Her voice cracked. Water. Please, the woman brought them to her house. Fed them, warmed them, asked no questions. When Miriam could finally speak, she asked, What town is this? Sweetwater. About 60 miles from Denver, 60 miles. It made it. Almost, we need to get to Denver. It's urgent, there's a stage. Leaves tomorrow morning, we don't have money. The woman smiled. I'll spot you. You can pay me back someday, Miriam almost cried. Kindness. After so much cruelty, it felt like a miracle. They boarded the stage the next morning. Miriam clutching the journal, Wyatt carrying Doc Crane's affidavit, the evidence that would bring down two monsters. The stage rattled along. Miriam watched out the window, the mountains receding behind them. Somewhere back there, Silas. Tobias, Thorne's body in the snow. She said a silent prayer for all of them, and then she saw them, riders, 5 of them, coming fast. Her heart stopped. Wyatt, he looked, swore. Is it Voss? I can't tell. The riders got closer, closer, and then one pulled ahead. Miriam's breath caught the roan, scarred across the shoulder, and on its back Silas, alive, bloody, battered. But alive. The stage stopped. Miriam threw open the door, jumped out before it fully halted, ran. Silas dismounted. She crashed into him. Arms around his neck. He caught her, held her. You're alive, she sobbed. You're alive. Takes more than 20 men, she pulled back. Looked at him. His face bruised, cut. One eye swollen. But he was smiling, actually smiling. What happened? Tobias and I held them off. Killed 3. Wounded 5 more. The rest ran when they realized we weren't giving up. And Tobias? Silas gestured. Tobias rode up, also battered. But alive, Mrs. Ashford, Marshall, we tracked you. Took a few days. But we found you. And my father? Wyatt asked. Tobias's face darkened. Gone. He and Voss retreated. But we're close. They know it. We're close. Silas looked at Miriam. Really looked. You all right, Thorne? He didn't make it. Pain flashed across Silas's face. I'm sorry. He died free. That's what he wanted. Still, I know. They stood in the middle of the road, battered, exhausted. But together we should go, Tobias said. Before they realize we're here, they mounted up. Miriam rode with Silas, pressed against his back, feeling his heartbeat. Solid. He was alive. They were alive. And Denver was close, so close. They rode into the city as the sun set. Denver, bigger than Redemption Falls, boozier, louder. Tobias led them to the federal courthouse, a stone building, imposing, official. Inside they met Marshal Winston Davies, an older man, grizzled, gray, but sharp-eyed. Tobias made introductions, explained everything. Davies listened. Silent. When Tobias finished, Davies spoke. That's quite an accusation. It's the truth, Miriam said. You have evidence? She set the journal on his desk. Davies opened it. Read. His expression never changed, but his jaw tightened. He looked up. This is substantial. Will you investigate? Tobias asked. I'll do more than investigate. I'll ride to Redemption Falls myself, with 20 federal deputies. And I'll arrest Clayton Voss and Eugene Crandall. He stood, extended his hand. You've done a brave thing, all of you. Miriam shook his hand. When? We leave tomorrow. You're welcome to ride with us. She looked at Silas. He nodded. We'll be there. They rode into Redemption Falls at dawn. 20 federal deputies. Marshal Winston Davies at the front. Behind him, Tobias, Silas, Miriam, Wyatt. And behind them, the weight of truth. The town was just waking. Smoke rising from chimneys. A dog barking somewhere. The smell of coffee and wood fires. Normal. Except it wasn't. Because everything was about to change. Davies raised his hand. The column stopped in front of the sheriff's office. A simple building. Wood. Faded paint. A sign that read Davies dismounted. Walked to the door. Knocked. Once. Twice. No answer. He tried the handle. Locked. Break it down. 2 deputies stepped forward. Shoulders to wood. The door splintered. Crashed inward. Inside empty. Papers scattered across the desk. Drawers open. Cell doors hanging loose. He's gone, Tobias said. How long? Hours, maybe less, Davies swore. Fan out. Search every building, every house. I want Clayton Voss found. The deputy scattered. Miriam stood in the doorway. Looking at the chaos, Voss had run. He knew they were coming. Somehow he knew the mayor, she said. Crandall? Where would he be? Wyatt answered. His house. East side of town, the biggest one. You can't miss it. Show me. They rode through streets Miriam knew. Streets where she'd once walked freely, where people had smiled, greeted her. Now those same people stood in doorways, watching, whispering. Some recognized her. Their faces showed shock, confusion, fear because Miriam Ashford, the disgraced widow, was riding with federal marshals, and that meant something. Crandall's house loomed ahead. 3 stories, white columns, manicured lawn even in winter, built on stolen money, on broken families, on lies. Davies dismounted, walked to the front door, knocked. This time, the door opened. A servant, young, frightened. I need to see Mayor Crandall. He's not here. Where is he? I don't know. He left. Last night. Took a bag. Didn't say where. Davies pushed past her, into the house. Miriam followed, inside opulence. Thick carpets, crystal chandeliers, paintings in gilded frames. All of it paid for with blood, Davies called out. Eugene Crandall. This is Federal Marshal Winston Davies. I have a warrant for your arrest. Come out now. Silence. They searched, room by room. The library. Empty. The dining room. Empty. The study. The door closed, locked. Open it, Davies ordered. The deputies broke through. Inside, Mayor Eugene Crandall sat at his desk. 62 years old. Gray hair. Expensive suit. A revolver in his hand. Pointed at his own head. Don't come closer. His voice shook. Davies stopped. Held up his hand. Mr. Mayor, let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. You're here to arrest me. I know that. Put the gun down. We can work this out. No, we can't. Because you have evidence, don't you? My son. My own son gave you my journal. He looked at Wyatt, standing in the doorway. How could you? Wyatt's face was stone. How could I? How could you? You stole from everyone. You killed. You destroyed lives. I built this town. You bled it dry. Crandall's hand shook. The gun wavered. I gave you everything. Education. Opportunity. A name. You gave me shame. The words hung heavy. Final. Crandall's eyes filled with tears. I'm your father. I know. That's the worst part. Silence. Crandall lowered the gun, slowly. Set it on the desk. All right. I surrender. Davies moved forward. Reached for the gun. And Crandall grabbed it. Faster than seemed possible for a man his age. Put it to his head. I'm sorry, Wyatt. I'm sorry I wasn't better, father. Don't. He pulled the trigger. The sound deafening in the enclosed space. Crandall slumped. Blood spattering the wall behind him. Wyatt stood. Frozen, staring at his father's body. Davies moved quickly, checked for a pulse. Nothing. He's gone. Wyatt didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. Miriam went and touched his arm. Wyatt, no response. Wyatt, look at me. Finally, he turned. His eyes empty. He killed himself. Yes. Rather than face justice. Yes, he was a coward to the end. His voice broke, and he wept. Great heaving sobs. For the father he'd lost. Or maybe for the father he'd never really had. Miriam held him. This man she barely knew. This man who'd betrayed his own blood to do the right thing. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. This is what he chose. They left Wyatt with the body, a deputy standing guard, making sure the scene was preserved. Davies gathered his men. Voss is still out there, and he's dangerous. Spread out. Search every building, every barn, every root cellar. I want him found. The deputies dispersed. Miriam stood in the street. Where would Voss go? Not home. Too obvious. Not the saloon. Too public. Where the church? She said suddenly. Davies turned. What? The First Methodist Church. It's where this started. Where Silas sat with me. Where Voss first realized someone was asking questions. You think he'd hide in a church? I think Clayton Voss believes he's done nothing wrong. I think he believes he's the victim. And where do victims go? To God, to absolution. Davies nodded. Show me. The church sat on the hill. White clapboard, crooked steeple. The same building where 9 months ago, Miriam had sat alone. They approached quietly. Davies and 4 deputies. Silas, Tobias. Miriam, the front door, unlocked. Davies pushed it open. Inside, dim. Candles flickering on the altar, and kneeling before it, Sheriff Clayton Voss still in uniform. Badge still pinned to his chest. His guns set carefully on the pew beside him. He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge them, just kept praying. Davies walked down the aisle. Slow. Careful. Sheriff Voss, I'm placing you under arrest. Voss finished his prayer, crossed himself, stood, turned. His face calm, almost peaceful. Marshal Davies. I knew you'd come, then you know why. The murder of Nathaniel Ashford. The embezzlement. The corruption. Among other things. Voss nodded. I won't run, I won't resist. He extended his hands, wrists together, ready for shackles. Davies hesitated. It was too easy, too simple. Men like Voss didn't surrender peacefully. Where's your son? Voss asked. Tobias stepped forward. I'm here. Voss looked at him. I'm proud of you. You chose the law, over me. That takes courage. Don't, Tobias' voice hard. Don't try to make this noble, I'm not. I'm just saying goodbye. You'll have plenty of time to say goodbye. In prison. I won't. Voss's hand moved. Fast, reaching for something in his coat. Gun. Davies shouted. But it wasn't a gun. It was a small vial glass, filled with liquid. Voss uncorked it, father. No, Boss Bias lunged. Too late. Voss drank the whole vial. In one swallow, he dropped it. Glass shattering on the wooden floor. What did you take? Davies demanded. Voss smiled. Sad. Laudanum. Enough to kill a horse. He sat down on the front pew. I'm not going to prison. I'm not giving you the satisfaction. Tobias knelt in front of him. Why? Why do this? Because I'm a coward, son. Always have been. Started small, a few dollars here and there. Told myself everyone does it. Told myself I deserved it. His breathing grew labored. And then it was too much. Too big. Too many people knew. Nathaniel Ashford. He was going to expose everything. I couldn't let that happen, so you killed him, so I killed him. And it was easy. Too easy. Just one bullet. One man. And my secrets were safe. His eyes found Miriam, standing at the back of the church. I'm sorry, Mrs. Ashford. Your husband. He was a good man. Better than me. Better than this town deserved. Miriam said nothing. Because what could she say? Sorry didn't bring Nathaniel back. Sorry didn't erase 9 months of shame. Sorry meant nothing. Voss's body convulsed. The poison working fast. Tobias, my son. I'm sorry I wasn't the man you thought. You weren't, I know. He reached out. Tobias took his hand, despite everything. Despite the lies, the murders, the corruption. He took his father's hand. I forgive you, Tobias whispered. Voss's eyes widened, surprised. Why? Because you're still my father, and I don't want to carry hate. Voss squeezed his son's hand once, and died. Slumped on the church pew, in the house of God, seeking forgiveness he'd never truly earn. 2 days later, the town gathered in the church. Ironic, but there was no other building large enough. Marshal Davies stood at the front, reading from an official document. By order of the Federal District Court of Wyoming. The following findings are entered into public record, his voice carried. Sheriff Clayton Voss and Mayor Eugene Crandall, acting in conspiracy, did embezzle funds totaling approximately $53,000 from the Miners Cooperative, from land sales, from construction contracts, and from numerous other sources. Gasps. Murmurs. 53,000. More than anyone had imagined. Furthermore, on the night of May 18, 1883, Clayton Voss did murder Nathaniel Ashford, who had discovered said embezzlement. Evidence includes ballistic analysis, eyewitness testimony, and the personal journal of Eugene Crandall. Davies looked up. Nathaniel Ashford is hereby cleared of all suspicion. His name is restored. His widow, Miriam Ashford, is entitled to compensation from the recovered funds and to the town's profound apology. Silence. Then slowly, people stood, one by one, Looking at Miriam, she sat in the front pew. Same place she'd sat 9 months ago. But this time she wasn't alone. Silas beside her. Tobias and Wyatt behind her, Martha Gable. The postmaster's wife stepped forward, her face wet with tears. Miriam, I'm so sorry. We should have believed you. You believed what you were told. That's no excuse, maybe not. But it's human. Others came apologies. Offering hands to shake. Offering too late their support. Miriam accepted, with grace. But inside she felt nothing. These people had abandoned her when she needed them most. And now they wanted forgiveness, wanted absolution, wanted to feel better about themselves. She gave it, because what else could she do? But she didn't forget, would never forget. The 9 months of isolation, of whispers, of stones thrown at her door. Some things couldn't be forgiven. Only endured that evening, Miriam stood at Nathaniel's grave. The headstone simple, Nathaniel Ashford, 1832 to 1883, beloved husband. She'd added a new line, carved fresh, honest man, brave soul. Forever remembered, Silas stood a respectful distance back, giving her space. I did it, she spoke to the stone. I made sure they knew the truth. I made sure your name was cleared. The wind rustled through the cemetery. I wish you were here to see it, to see them apologize, to see Voss answer for what he did. She knelt, placed flowers, wild ones, from the mountain, because Nathaniel had never cared for fancy things. I'm going to be all right, I think, eventually. I'm not alone anymore. You made sure of that, sending me to Silas. He's a good man. Like you said, her voice broke. I miss you. I'll always miss you. But I'm going to live, like you wanted. I'm going to find something other than grief. She stood, brushed dirt from her skirt, turned. Silas was there, waiting, patient. Ready? He asked. Yes. They walked out of the cemetery. Toward what? She didn't know. But for the first time in 9 months, she wanted to find out. 1 week later, Doc Adelaide Crane stood in the town square. A crowd gathered. She'd called a meeting. Open to all. We have a decision to make. Her voice strong, commanding. We need a new sheriff, a new mayor. We need to rebuild trust. Murmurs of agreement. I propose we hold open elections. Real ones, where everyone votes. Not just property owners, not just men. Everyone. Shocked silence. You're saying women should vote? Someone called out. I'm saying everyone who lives here, everyone who is hurt by what Voss and Crandall did. They should have a say in who leads us next. That's not how it's done. Then maybe it's time we do things differently. More murmurs. Some angry, some thoughtful. Finally, a woman stepped forward. Sarah Brennan. Widow. Rancher. I support Doc Crane's proposal. We've seen what happens when power stays in the same hand.
One question.
When no one chicks. Another voice. I agree. And another. Me too. Until the majority. All right, Doc Crane smiled. Then let's vote. First decision. Who should be our interim mayor? Until elections can be properly held, someone called out. Doc Crane herself. Applause. Crane held up her hands. I'm honored. But I'm a doctor, not a politician. That's exactly why you should do it, Sarah Brennan said. You care. About healing, not power, more applause. Crane looked around, at the faces, hopeful. For the first time in years. All right, interim mayor, until we can do this properly, cheers. And for sheriff, Crane looked directly at Tobias, Marshal Voss. Would you consider taking the position? Temporarily? Tobias stood. I don't know if I can. My father, is not you? You proved that. You chose justice over blood. That's the kind of man we need, he hesitated. Then, on one condition. I serve only until you find someone permanent. I'm not staying in Redemption Falls. Too many memories. Fair enough, another voice. What about compensation? For the families who lost money, lost land? The recovered funds will be distributed, based on documented losses. It won't be perfect. It won't make anyone whole, but it's a start. Miriam listened from the edge of the crowd. This town, her town, actually trying to be better. It was something, not redemption. Not yet. But a beginning. That night, Silas found Miriam on the porch of her cabin, the one that had been searched, violated. She'd spent the week cleaning, repairing, making it hers again. You're staying, he said. Not a question, for now. The town needs to see me stay. To see that I'm not running, and after? She looked at him. I don't know. What about you? Back to the mountain? I've been thinking about that, and maybe it's time for something different. Like what? He sat beside her. I'm 52 years old. I've spent 20 years alone, running from what I did, from who I was. You were a soldier, following orders. I was a killer. Orders don't change that. No, but time does. You're not that man anymore? How do you know? Because that man wouldn't have helped me, wouldn't have risked everything for a stranger's widow. He was quiet. Nathaniel wasn't a stranger, no. But I was. She took his hand. You kept your promise. You protected me. You gave me back my husband's name. His honor. That means something. It was the least I could do. It was everything. They sat. The night air cold but not unbearable. Spring would come soon. Thaw the ground. Bring new life. I need to tell you something, Miriam said. What? When you rode into Denver, when I saw you were alive. I felt something I haven't felt in years. What's that? Hope. Not just about justice. About the future. About not being alone. Silas turned to her. Miriam, I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know. You matter. To me. You matter. He reached up, brushed a strand of hair from her face. His hand rough, calloused, but gentle. I don't know how to be with someone. It's been so long, then we learn. Together, I'm broken, so am I. I have nightmares. About the people I killed. I have nightmares about the people who killed Nathaniel. I don't know if I can stay in one place. Then we don't stay. We travel. We see things. We live. He cupped her face. You deserve better than me. I deserve someone who sees me, who stands with me when everyone else walks away. And that's you, Miriam. She kissed him. Soft, tentative. He froze. For one moment, and then he kissed her back. 20 years of loneliness melting in one touch. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Miriam smiled. Was that all right? Yes, good. She stood. Held out her hand. Stay, tonight. Just stay. He took her hand. All right, they went inside. Together, into the small cabin, lit by firelight, warm, safe, and for the first time, neither of them was alone. Spring 1885. 1 year later, Miriam stood before a classroom of children, the Nathaniel Ashford School, built with recovered funds. A promise kept. She taught reading now, writing, arithmetic. The children looked at her with respect, not shame. Through the window, she could see Silas building a clinic for Doc Crane, the first woman mayor in Wyoming. He saw her watching, waved. She waved back. That evening, they sat together in the small house they'd built, on the edge of town, close enough to matter. Far enough to breathe, Tobias wrote, Silas said, from Denver. He's doing well, and Wyatt gone east. Started over. Miriam nodded. Some people needed distance to heal. She understood that. The town's changing, she said slowly. But changing, yes. Outside, the first stars appeared. Somewhere on a hillside, Nathaniel Ashford rested. His name cleared, his truth told, his wife living. The way he'd wanted. Miriam took Silas's hand. Thank you. For keeping your promise to Nathaniel? To both of us. He squeezed her hand. No words needed. Because some things are worth the price. Honor, truth, justice, and love. Always love. Even the second time. Miriam woke early. The habit of a lifetime as a teacher. Silas still slept beside her, his breathing deep and even. She watched him for a moment. This man who'd come into her life like a storm and stayed like shelter. She rose quietly, dressed, made coffee. The ritual of morning familiar now. Outside, the town was waking. Smoke rose from chimneys, the blacksmith's hammer already ringing, life continuing, different than before. But continuing, the Nathaniel Ashford School sat at the north end of town. A new building, wood, large windows to let in light. Inside, rows of desks, a chalkboard, maps on the walls, books on shelves. Miriam arrived before the children, prepared her lessons, arithmetic for the younger ones, history for the older. She'd discovered she loved teaching, loved watching understanding dawn in young faces, loved shaping minds that hadn't yet learned to hate or judge unfairly. The children arrived in groups, laughing, pushing, being children. They greeted her with respect but without fear. That was important. She never wanted them to fear her. Good morning, Mrs. Ashford. Good morning, children. Take your seats, they settled. Opened their books. Began the day's lessons, mathematics, grammar, history. During history, a hand went up. Tommy Miller, 9 years old, bright. Curious, yes, Tommy? Mrs. Ashford. My pa says this school is named after your husband. The one who died. The room went quiet. Other children looked at her, waiting. This question came up occasionally. She'd learned how to answer. That's right. My husband Nathaniel believed education was important. He believed children should learn to think. To question. To understand. Pa says he was a hero. He was a good man who tried to do the right thing. Sometimes that's what heroes are. Tommy nodded, satisfied. The lesson continued. At lunch, Miriam sat at her desk, eating bread and cheese, watching the children play outside. Their laughter carried through the open windows, pure, uncomplicated. Doc Crane appeared in the doorway. May I? Of course, Crane sat. Looked around the classroom. You've done well here. The children are good students. I meant you. You've done well. Building this. Building yourself back. Miriam set down her bread. Some days are harder than others. I imagine so, but yes, I'm finding purpose. That helps. Crane nodded. The town council met last night. We voted on the permanent mayor position, and they want me to stay. 3-year term, will you? I think so. There's still work to do. Still trust to rebuild. You're doing that. I see it. We're doing it. All of us. You, me. The people who chose to stay and fight for something better. They sat in comfortable silence. 2 women who'd survived corruption and loss and emerged stronger. How's Silas? Crane asked. Miriam smiled. Good. He's building your clinic. Should be finished next month. He's found his place then. I think so. He needed purpose too. Needed to build instead of hide. You're good for each other. We are. Silas stood back, examined his work. The clinic was nearly complete. 2 rooms, one for examinations, one for recovery. Simple, functional, solid. He'd discovered he liked building. Liked working with his hands to create rather than destroy. Liked seeing something take shape from nothing. The clinic would serve the town well. Doc Crane was a good physician. She deserved a proper workspace. Looking good, Silas turned. Tobias Voss stood at the construction site, older somehow. The weight of his father's sins aging him beyond his years. Thought you went back to Denver, Silas said. I did. Came back to testify at the federal hearing, making sure all the evidence is properly recorded. How long you staying? Few days. Then back to Denver for good. They stood together, watching workers carry supplies. Neither spoke for a while. Finally, Tobias broke the silence. I wanted to thank you for helping my father die with some dignity. You could have let him suffer. No man deserves to suffer. Not like that. He deserved something. For what he did, he got it. He died knowing his son forgave him. That's more than most killers get. Tobias nodded. I struggle with that. The forgiveness. Some days I regret it, some days you will. That's human. Do you forgive? The men you killed? The things you did as a soldier? Silas was quiet. I don't know if I forgive myself, but I've stopped punishing myself. There's a difference. What's the difference? Punishment is staying on that mountain, alone, hiding. Forgiveness is coming down, building this clinic, being with Miriam. Living, Tobias absorbed that. I'm trying to live. But Denver feels wrong. Everywhere feels wrong. Give it time. How much time? As much as it takes. They watched the workers. Then Tobias spoke again. There's talk in Denver about opening a federal investigation office in Wyoming. They want someone who knows the territory. Someone honest, they ask you. They did. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. But it would mean staying in Wyoming. Facing the memories every day. Or it would mean making new memories. Better ones. Tobias looked at him. Is that what you're doing? Trying to. Does it work? Some days better than others. Tobias smiled, sad but genuine. That's honest, at least. The federal hearing took place in Denver. Miriam traveled with Silas, Tobias, Wyatt, all the witnesses who'd survived. The courtroom was formal, intimidating, dark wood, high ceilings. A judge who looked like he'd seen every kind of human evil. Miriam testified first. Told her story, the isolation, the shame, the discovery of truth, her voice steady. She'd practiced this, knew what needed to be said. The defense attorney, appointed to represent the deceased Voss and Crandall, tried to shake her testimony. Suggested she was bitter. Suggested she'd fabricated evidence. suggested her relationship with Silas Drummond clouded her judgment. She met his eyes. My husband was murdered. His murderer tried to destroy my life to cover his crime. I'm not bitter. I'm factual. The evidence speaks for itself. The attorney moved on. Called Silas. Silas testified about finding Nathaniel wounded, about the investigation, about the bullet. His testimony was sparse, factual, unshakable. The attorney tried to discredit him. You're a known recluse, Mr. Drummond. A man who's lived alone for 20 years. How can we trust your recollections? I live alone because I choose to. Doesn't affect my eyes. Doesn't affect my memory. I know what I saw, and you conveniently fell in love with the widow. That's quite a coincidence. Nothing convenient about it. I gave my word to protect her. I kept it. What happened after isn't your business, the judge intervened. Counselor, stick to the evidence. Tobias testified next. About his father's confession. About the threats made to Doc Crane. About the systematic corruption. His voice broke once, when describing Fatma's final moments, but he continued. Wyatt testified about his father's journal. About years of watching corruption. About the final decision to come forward. He wept on the stand, no shame in it. Just grief for what could have been. Doc Crane testified about the autopsy, about the gunshot wound, about the threats that kept her silent. Her medical expertise unquestionable. The hearing lasted 3 days. At the end, the judge delivered his ruling. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds that Nathaniel Ashford was unlawfully killed by Sheriff Clayton Voss. That Eugene Crandall was complicit in said murder and in a pattern of embezzlement spanning 20 years. All findings of theft against Nathaniel Ashford are hereby vacated. His estate is entitled to full compensation and restoration of honor. The gavel fell. Final, absolute. Outside the courthouse, Miriam breathed. Really breathed. For the first time in over a year, it was over. Truly over. They returned to Redemption Falls. The town had changed in the weeks they'd been gone. The clinic was finished. A new sheriff had been appointed, a young man from Denver with no ties to the old corruption. Elections were scheduled for mayor. Doc Crane would run unopposed. Miriam and Silas walked through town. People greeted them, friendly, respectful. Some stopped to apologize again. Others just nodded. Acknowledgement without words. They reached their house. Small, simple, but theirs. Inside, Miriam started a fire, made tea. They sat together on the porch as evening fell. What now? Silas asked. What do you mean? The school, the town. Is this where you want to be? Miriam thought. No, part of me wants to stay. Prove I can build a life here despite everything, and the other part wants to see what else is out there. The world is bigger than Redemption Falls. It is. What about you? What do you want? He took her hand. I spent 20 years wanting nothing, needing nothing. Now I want to wake up next to you. I want to build things. I want to matter to someone. You matter to me, I know. That's new. That's good. They sat in silence, comfortable, easy. Finally, Miriam spoke. We could travel, spend winters in warmer places. Come back in spring for the school year. You'd do that? I think I would. I've spent my whole life in one place. Maybe it's time to see others. Where would we go? I don't know. California? New Mexico? Anywhere there's sun and people need teachers. Silas smiled. That sounds good. You'd come with me? Told you. I want to wake up next to you. Don't care where. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Then we'll figure it out. Together. 2 years later. Summer, 1887. Miriam stood on a beach in California. The Pacific Ocean stretched before her, endless blue, waves rolling in constant rhythm. Silas walked beside her, his hand in hers. They'd traveled, seen places Miriam had only read about. Deserts, mountains different from Wyoming's, cities bigger than Denver. And they'd found work everywhere. Miriam teaching, Silas building, always building. Each spring they returned to Redemption Falls, to the school, to the community they'd helped heal. Each fall they left again, chasing warmth, chasing new experiences. Miriam had changed. Her hair was grayer now, lines around her eyes from squinting at sun. But she laughed more, smiled more, lived more. You thinking about him? Silas asked. She didn't need to ask who. Always. In some way, does it hurt still? Different now. Not grief exactly. More like remembering someone who gave me something valuable. What's that? Permission to live. To find happiness again. To not carry his death as a punishment, they walked. Feet in sand. Water occasionally rushing over their ankles. Cool, cool. Refreshing, I wrote to Wyatt, Miriam said. He's engaged. That's good, to a teacher in Boston. Says she makes him want to be better than his father. Love does that, does it? He stopped, turned to her. You make me want to be better. Make me want to deserve the second chance I got. You deserve it, Silas. You always did, he kissed her. Salt on their lips from the ocean spray. When they pulled apart, both smiling, he spoke. Marry me. She blinked. What? Marry me, proper. Legal. I want you to be my wife, not just the woman I travel with. We're not young. No, people will talk. Let 'em. I loved Nathaniel, I know. I'm not asking you to forget him. I'm asking you to choose me too. Choose us. Miriam looked at this man. This broken, beautiful man who'd kept a promise to a dead friend and found himself in the process. Yes. I'll marry you. He picked her up, spun her around, both laughing. Like children. Like people who'd forgotten how to be young and were remembering. They married in a small church in San Francisco. No family. Just a few friends they'd made in their travels. A simple ceremony, simple vows, simple rings. But the love wasn't simple. It was complicated by loss and history and the ghosts they both carried. But it was real. It was chosen. It was worth every price they'd paid to find it. That night, in a small hotel room, Miriam looked at her ring. Plain gold. Nothing fancy. Perfect. What are you thinking? Silas asked. That Nathaniel would be happy. That I'm happy. That sometimes the hardest roads lead to the best places. Do you believe that? I'm starting to. They lay together. Window open to ocean breeze. Tomorrow they'd continue traveling, or maybe settle somewhere new. Build another school, another clinic, another community. But tonight, they were just two people who'd survived impossible things, who'd chosen each other, who'd learned that some things, honor, truth, justice, love, some things are worth any price. Outside, waves crashed, constant, eternal, the sound of the world continuing, the sound of life going on. The sound of hope, and inside, Miriam Ashford Drummond slept. Finally at peace, finally whole, finally impossibly happy, because some things are worth the price. Always, the end.